Welcome to Financial Coffee, brought to you by Resource One Credit Union, ignited by the credit union movement and inspired by not wanting to be broke. So come have a sip as we try to come up with just the right blend of financial tidbits to help you achieve your money goals.
Hello, and welcome back to Financial Coffee, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on our mini series on history. I'm kind of sad because this is the last episode that we plan to do about the history, but it's been really good tidbits of information. And like I said before, I've been learning a lot of new things, and I hope that you are too. So we're going to continue right on along with it. Of course, we have our guru here, Mike. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me back. I'm glad that I haven't bored everybody to tears so far.
Surprisingly, you haven't bored me. So there's other people out there I'm sure you've not bored. But of course, we have to ask you first, what are you sipping on today?
So I am sipping on water out of my trusty water bottle once again.
Nice. And I won't call you boring because I did, we're talking about history. Nothing is boring in these episodes. I'm not going to use the B word. Okay. So I do have some black coffee. It's really good. It's really strong. And because we want to finish strong. So there you have it. But let's get right into it. So just to recap, we've had 3 episodes already where we've talked about where credit unions have started, some key players that have helped us to get to where we are today. We've talked about the different time periods that were really instrumental in different events that happened in those time periods that pushed us to where we are today. We talked about the 20s, so the Roaring 20s. We talked about the Great Depression. We talked about the presidency and just different things that were happening in the country, not necessarily with credit unions, but different things that were happening in our nation. We had FDR as president at one point right after the Great Depression or during the Great Depression to get us through that. And just big things were happening that catapulted credit unions to be able to operate fully and to offer more things to our members. And I think that that's what we're going to kind of finish on is some of those key points and how they've helped us today. So we went through the 20s, we went through the 30s and the 40s. So we're going to start here today with the 50s. And so 1951, let's talk about the Revenue Act of 1951. What is this all about, Mike?
So the Revenue Act of 1951 is a big point of contention with our competitors in the financial industry. And that's because it's an act that basically allowed credit unions tax exempt status. So because credit unions are not for profit, we're a cooperative. And what that basically means is, I'm sure you've covered in many other episodes, is that we're owned by our members. And so there's no owners of the credit union that if we make $5 million in a year, they get $4 million. If we make $5 million in a year, that all goes back into the credit union. So that goes back into the credit union in the forms of, lower interest rates on your loans, better interest rates on your investments, more services. Anybody that's been a member of Resource One for any period of time probably realizes the number of services we've added over the last 5 or 6 years, especially with some of our things like digital online banking. Well, a lot of that's because we don't have to pay federal income taxes because, one, nobody's getting rich off of the loans coming from Resource One.
Yep.
Unfortunately, this is a battle that pops up every few years. Somebody will, some legislator that is friendly with the big banks will try to pass some type of legislation that adds. That removes our tax exempt status, but it is something that we continue to fight for, and it's there for good reason. It's because we are truly a not-for-profit institution. We serve a different mission than what for-profit institutions serve, and that's one of the reasons why we keep that tax exempt status.
Yeah, and I'm not here to bash the banks. I won't ever do that. Everybody has their own financial situations, and different people can be helped with different things. I don't want to do that, but this is where we kind of have that clash. And so, when somebody asks me, should I join a credit union or a bank? I'm always going to say a credit union. Everything always depends on your financial situation, but this is where, this is the point where we started kind of clashing there, starting in the 1950s. And in the 1960s, I'm kind of skipping a little bit ahead here, but in the 1960s, credit unions started experiencing really, a lot of growth. And so because of this growth, the banks just, they did not like that. They did not like, we were taking some of the people, obviously, that they were serving, and they were coming to credit unions. And even today, that is still a battle. We still have different events and different things that we do when it comes to legislation and all of that fun stuff. I don't want to ruin the words in this, but there's still a lot of things that we do today because the banks still don't understand that, or still don't like that we're not doing the same thing that they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's frustrating because, especially, back, in the 50s and 60s, credit unions don't look very much like they look today. And we're going to talk a little bit about this throughout this episode. But, a credit union in 1955 basically was a place for people to park money and a place to borrow money. We didn't have things like checking accounts and credit cards and mortgages and online banking and ATMs. It really was a place that it gave people an opportunity to store their money in a place that was safer than their mattress. Or, it sounds crazy to think about this, but people back in those days actually buried their money. And so this gave people an opportunity to put their money someplace that didn't cost them an arm and a leg. It actually would pay them a little bit of money and give them an opportunity to borrow money as well. And so eventually that does start to get some of the notice of the banks. And like you mentioned, credit unions started to see some growth. We saw a ton of growth in the number of credit unions during the 1960s. And unfortunately, because I say unfortunately, but that did also kind of draw the attention of the government. And one of the things that did come from this is in 1970, the National Credit Union Administration was chartered by Congress. And so this is kind of the governing body of credit unions. One of the questions that we get asked a lot is, are you federally insured? Do you have FDIC insurance?
FDIC, yeah.
Credit unions don't have the FDIC. We have what's called the National Credit Union Administration, or the NCUA, and we have things called like the National Credit Union Share Insurance Fund, and that's what insures your money. And it works the exact same way as the FDIC. They come in, they take a look at our books every year. They make sure that we are financially stable and sound, because they are insuring our money for our members. Kind of along with that, you start to see a lot of regulatory changes, especially in the 1970s. So like I mentioned, the 50s and 60s, and even before that, you basically had a savings account and you had an opportunity to borrow some money. In the 1970s is when you really start to see credit unions start to look a lot more like the financial institutions of the day. We started offering things like mortgages, share certificates, which are also known by the name of certificates of deposits, shared draft accounts, which is a super fancy credit union way of saying checking accounts. And so these were things that there was legislation passed throughout the 1970s that really started to kind of offer some of these new services. We, as a credit union, we're actually able to offer services to compete with the banks at this period of time.
Yeah. So sometimes you may, I feel like, you see that a credit union, it's not, you won't see a Resource One credit union on every corner like you see a Chase Bank or like you see a Bank of America. And so obviously the difference in size, there is a difference in size, there is a difference in resources. So it's been hard. It's been a battle, trying to be able to offer all of these products, but we want to stay up. We want to stay relevant. Credit unions want to stay relevant. And that's what we do with the money that comes in. We do things to stay relevant. It's all for our members. It's all for giving back. Nothing is going to a stockholder. Not a dime of it is going to a person. Of course, we're going to pay the bills. We want to keep the lights on so we can process your transaction. But we're strictly not for profit. So these different laws that have been passed, they give us that ability to be able to offer anything that we can that's good for you. We're offering it for you, not for anybody else, not for anybody else's benefit, just our members.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to mention, and we're going to jump ahead a little bit here, but and we've touched on this in some of our other episodes. At this period of time, the charter for a credit union basically was a small closed group of people. So and that conception is still there today for a lot of people, is that you had to work for a specific company. So we were Sears Employees Federal Credit Union. We eventually absorbed things like the Southland Corporation, which 7-Eleven, some of those kind of things. And that was really how you became a member of a credit union back then. But all of that changed in the 1990s. So throughout the entire 1990s, there was this big push for credit unions to be able to serve their communities, because we do good things. We're here to actually help our members. We're here to improve access to credit, to improve access to savings. We offer things like financial education without being legislatively told to. The banks offer those kind of things, but that's actually, they legislatively have to. The law states that they actually have to do some of those things.
Interesting. I did not know that.
We just do that because that's part of who we are. And so that kind of culminated in the 1990s with a bill in 1998. It's called HR 1151. It was the Credit Union Membership Access Act, and this allowed credit unions to start serving communities. And so, it moved outside of the realm of you can only serve this specific company, to where you can actually serve a geographical region. So initially for Resource One Credit Union, that was the Dallas area, as well as some areas of Houston. But there are some credit unions that serve entire states. There are some that serve entire regions of the country. And it really offered up a lot of access to credit union membership to people that never had access. Because previously, if you didn't work for a company that had credit union access, you couldn't become a member of a credit union. And so that was probably the biggest turning point. And since then, we've seen credit union membership just grow by leaps and bounds. We have over 100 million members of credit unions today across the world. It really is become such a huge global movement. And I'm sure anybody that's watching this is probably well aware of that. Because they're either a member of a credit union, they work for a credit union, or they're a part of this membership in this movement. So it's wonderful to be involved. I couldn't imagine working for another industry at this point, because of all the good things that we do.
Absolutely. And I have to say, like, a lot of things that we've referenced, we say it over and over, watch this previous episodes. Really, our playlist of our podcast episodes have lots of good information on the history of Resource One Credit Union, why credit unions are here in the first place. We go into a lot more detail about what we're here for. So if you're putting your money somewhere and you want to know more information, that's what we're giving you. We just want to make sure that you understand who we are, who you're banking with, and to refer your friends and family, not just to refer them for any kind of gift or for us. Do it because it's something that they need. And that's one thing I like to stress is of course, we have to pay the bills, but anything that we get is going right back to you. So any kind of profit that we make is going right back to our members. So if there's something that it's a disservice for us not to offer something to you that you need and that we know you could benefit from. And so that's all we want to do, is we want to make sure that you have access to those. And with the credit union, you have access to a reasonable place to put your money, to take out a loan if you need it. And we have what you need right here. Also, I would highly suggest, when you're watching these podcasts or listening, however you're getting this information, I would watch these in order, because again, we start in the 20s. We start when Desjardins and Philine, go back, check out episode 1. We go and we talk about them right from the beginning all the way to the 90s, which and this has affected who we are today and why we like to do what we do. Again, it's all about our members. It's all about the people. Our motto is people helping people. And that's what this podcast is all about. We just want to give you some information, some useful information that you could use. So of course, and it says this in our podcast, if you have questions, if you have ideas, suggestions, let us know. We don't know unless you tell us. So feel free to let us know. And I've really enjoyed the conversations that we've had.
I've really enjoyed it. I appreciate you having me on, Veronica. And, it's been a lot of fun.
Yes. So again, check us out. I hope you enjoyed this. And hey, if you have, we can do some more. I know Mike would be excited to do it. I would be excited to learn some more. So thank you so much. And again, check out our other episodes. They can help you out a lot. Have a great day. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
So if you ever have any questions or comments about anything that we've talked about, just like a credit union, we're here to serve you. So let us know what you want to hear. Email us at financialcoffee@r1cu.org. That's the letter R, the number 1, the letter C, the letter U.org.